Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I would love to get your thoughts. You could call or text into the show at 719-247-1313, or find me on Twitter at Gingerly Tweets. Eagerly awaiting Sean Payton's Wednesday press conference, because I don't know if you've seen, but there is some significant news yesterday in the world of the Denver Broncos vis-a-vis their best player. So we'll wait and see what Sean Payton has to say about the plan without Pat Surtain. And we'll talk more about that as the program goes on. I want to start with the Avalanche. And, you know, I was trying to think of the right analogy to use because the dam didn't break last night with the Avalanche power play. The way I would put it is they finally broke the glass. And the reason why I would use it, because I pride myself on being scientifically accurate on this program. Glass doesn't leak, right? A dam, you can get a little, a couple of things springing up, leaks here and there as the water pressure builds behind it. But with glass, it doesn't leak. It just breaks if there's enough pressure. And you look at the Avalanche power play over the past week, they were 0 for 2 against the Devils on Sunday, 0 for 3 against the Bruins on Saturday, 1 for 8 against Carolina, and 0 for 1 against who I can't even read my writing, who they played right before Carolina, the Utah. The point being, there were no little signs that the Avalanche power play was on the verge of a breakthrough. Not really. I mean, we saw what Jared Bednar was doing to try and get it going from a personnel standpoint, right? Victor Olofsson playing kind of in that bumper spot in the power play unit. Valeri Nichushkin being elevated to the top power play unit. So we saw the Avalanche trying things to get the breakthrough, but there was no slow drip of progress. The results were very much the same, right? They did get a goal against Carolina, but they had 8 opportunities. So at some point, the law of averages kicks in here. And then just all of a sudden, the glass broke. And they go 4 of 6 last night on the power play in an 8-4 win over the New Jersey Devils. But as this has been one of the main storylines of the start to this Avalanche season, I've maintained that the power play is not a difficult concept, right? It's not a difficult thing to figure out how to be good at it, right? What differentiates, I think, so often teams that are really good on the power play and ones that aren't is just the ability of the players to execute the plan. And it's also how you employ those players in order to generate the things that usually lead to power play goals. One of them is, one, and it's, I guess, 2 within one. The most simple concept, get everything to the net. Bodies, pucks to the net. That's what you have to do. Okay, and I have seen the Avs, and I think Valeri Nichushkin this is part of him being elevated to that top power play unit. Like Arturi Lehkonen is a guy that plays around the net, but like Valeri Nichushkin can get there easier, with his size. But the other part of that is getting pucks to the net. And what I saw last night from the Colorado Avalanche was not any, 4D chess, galaxy brain plan here to get power play goals. But what I did see was decisiveness. Because if you want to peel back a layer of the premise that you got to get pucks to the net, you got to get them to the net quickly. Right? Which means puck movement, and that means when you get the puck, you shoot the puck. And what I saw last night was not amazing play. I thought the first goal by Marty Necas was just a really tough shot, and he got it to go. Like, all credit to Marty Necas. It's not the first time. Marty Necas has had a handful of goals this year that you look, and he is shooting into the tiniest space. That's what the first goal was. But there were two other power play goals that just the Avs fired it, and maybe Jacob Markstrom, the Devils goalie, was a little bit slow to close up the 5-hole. I mean, that's all it was. I would love to sit here with the Avs going 4 of 6 on the power play and go and see this is what Dave Haxtell did. And then diagram it for you, like on the NHL broadcast. It's not that complicated. When the Avs got the puck, they shot it. Right? Good puck movement, making New Jersey move left to right, side to side. And by the way, New Jersey's a very good penalty killing unit. So this is not the Avs power play getting right against, some team that's awful on the penalty kill. New Jersey's really good at it. They were able to break through because they moved the puck quickly and they shot it quickly. There was a speed of thought last night on the Avs power play. And that's what allowed them to break through and get 4 of 6. And while there was always going to be a point where the Avalanche power play would be productive. Like, come on, they weren't going to be the best 5-on-5 team in the entire league was not going to be dead last in the power play this entire season. They were going to figure it out at some point. But that being the absolute floor and not what the Avalanche are going to be this season, hitting 4 of 6 against the league's third best penalty killing unit isn't what they're going to be either, I don't think. But it was just the perfect night to just break that glass and have a huge night on special teams. Cale Makar sums it up even better than I can.
It all starts with just guys going to the net and then also getting pucks to the net as well and reading off that. So, I feel like we did a good job at that tonight. You guys were shooting well.
Just shot more. I know hockey players can be very short and to the point, but when it comes to the power play, that's literally the explanation. And I think that exacerbates the frustration for a lot of people because you look at a team that 5-on-5, again, is better than any other team in the NHL. Go look at whatever analytic you want to look at. The Avs are the best 5-on-5 team in the NHL. Why can't they be better or close to as good? I guess they can be better than number one. Can they be similar when the other team has one less skater? It is the most frustrating thing about the beautiful game of hockey is that a team that can score goals for fun 5-on-5, and you certainly saw that last night too on full display, against New Jersey that they can't, with New Jersey down a player, they can't seem to find a way to break through. But they did last night. And now what you hope if you're an Avs fan is just this is the start of the Avalanche's climb up the pecking order when it comes to scoring on the power play. And look, the expectations for the Avalanche are what they are. The Avalanche cannot go into the playoffs with a solid power play or a decent power play or a power play that ranks, 14, 15, 16. No. That's the longer term view here with the Colorado Avalanche. They were like 8th last year on the power play going into the playoffs. It wasn't good enough. Now, I think you could definitely say that after the Mikko Rantanen trade, if you did a before and after, the power play wasn't as good after they traded Mikko Rantanen than it was before. So were they truly the 8th best power play unit with that personnel, with Brock Nelson and Marty Necas and all these new guys? Probably not. But we've certainly seen the Avs run into some trouble on special teams before last season, right? So they don't just have to be solid, serviceable, like everything else that they have put out on the ice this season. They got to be elite. They don't have to be the best, because being the best 5-on-5 team goes a long way. But they got to be up there. We're talking about a team that it's Stanley Cup or bust. Last year, you can give them a bit of a reprieve, taking out who they lost to. I know that really, throws salt in the wound that they lost to Dallas, but just the fact that that Avs team last year fell short of the Stanley Cup, I think you can accept it given how much new was on that team. They don't have that now. This is a full season of Necas, full season of Brock Nelson. It's got to work, and it's got to work at a top-tier level. And perhaps last night is the sign that they're going to start to climb up, and we'll periodically check in. And after game 82, we'll stack up the Avs power play compared to other top teams in the NHL and see where it's at. But they went from nothing on the power play to everything. 4 of 6 last night. And one of the personnel changes that Jared Bednar has made, and it's also fits in line with the metaphor I'm using when it comes to the glass breaking, Victor Olofsson, right? Late offseason addition, really, as Chris McFarland has been known for, a tidy bit of hockey business, just a good, solid depth addition to this team. And that guy has been beating his head up against the wall for the season, the entire season, albeit a couple, 3 weeks, and just couldn't put in a lot of shots on goal, couldn't get anything to go. Last night, the glass breaks for him as well. He gets a hat trick. Here's Victor Olofsson on that.
No, I felt great. Like I said, I've been putting a lot of pucks on the net, and unfortunately not a lot in the net. But usually it does come when you keep shooting, and yeah.
There's been so much good to start this Avs season. It felt like 2 of the lingering things were, when is Victor Olofsson going to break through here? Because it's not like other depth bottom 6 guys haven't broken through. And the power play. And they checked both of those boxes last night against a very good New Jersey team. Although, to be fair to the situation, New Jersey was quite poor last night. Especially 5-on-5. 5 on the penalty kill, I didn't see the Devils making a lot of mistakes. I give credit to the Avs. And what's heartening if you're an Avalanche fan is I think the Avs earned those goals. The 5-on-5 goals that took the 4 even strength goals, that was a lot of bad from New Jersey. That's why that game was 8-4. But the power play, the thing that you had been watching night to night, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? It happened last night, and it happened against one of the better penalty killing teams in the league. And 4 of 6, it doesn't get much better than that. And kind of puts a very difficult week in the rearview mirror, and we'll see where the Avs go from here. 8-4 the final over the New Jersey Devils. I'll take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the Broncos making a move because of injury, but not at the position you may be thinking. Air Force hockey back at Cadet Ice Arena this Friday and Saturday night, taking on the Brown Bears. If you would like to spend your Halloween evening, or at least part of it, at Cadet Ice Arena, I have a pair of tickets for the 13th texter to text Falcons and their name to 719-247-1313. Again, this is for the 7:05 puck drop Friday night, Air Force and Brown. The Broncos are dealing with, obviously, a significant injury at the cornerback position with Patrick Surtain, but they're also dealing with some injury concerns at the tight end position. Nate Atkins is now out. And the Broncos made a move today to try and fortify their depth that I think caught a lot of people's attention. 41-year-old Mercedes Lewis was signed to the practice squad. Here's Sean Payton and what they're getting in the 41-year-old. Thus continues the resurgence. Are we doing the summer thing anymore? Like there was hot girl summer and all that kind of stuff. I feel like this is, and I know we're into fall, but the season of the 40-ish year old. Think about the renaissance we are going through with people at or around the age of 40 years old. We're just coming off of a season where Alexander Ovechkin broke the all-time goals record, and he's approaching, 900? I think we're on 900 watch, if I'm not mistaken. Sidney Crosby is having a great start to the season. He's 38. We just came away from the, and I don't like what they call it, the Icy Hot Bowl. I don't like that. I'm 40. I don't use Icy Hot, but I also don't play football. So I guess fair enough. But we had Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco, right? In the NBA, I know he's out with the sciatica, which is setting the 40-year-olds back a little bit, that LeBron has that kind of an injury, but we know what LeBron was at 40 last year. And once he does get back, I'm sure he'll be very productive at his advanced age. So it's a good time now, not for yours truly. I can speak on this from personal experience. It's not a great time for everybody at or around the age of 40, but in professional sports right now, it's good. Mercedes Lewis, good on him. Getting a gig. And look, you look at the Broncos tight end situation. That dude might play on a Sunday here in the not so distant future. He's got another in the 40-year-old group here making a resurgence. So good on Mercedes Lewis, but you heard Sean Payton there talking about what his role is going to be. This isn't Mercedes Lewis becomes, a second receiving option outside of Evan Ingram at the position. This isn't a referendum on Evan Ingram. They just need bodies. And the culture fit still matters. And you heard Sean Payton say it, blocking. jumbo set. They need another guy to block. So you can look at his receiving numbers over the years and go, oh, maybe that's not what he's being brought in to do. And we'll see if he's elevated this Sunday or Sundays beyond here. But yeah, they're just short on numbers at the tight end position. Now, this may not be the last tight end that Sean Payton adds to the room. We are a week away from the trade deadline. And there is some smoke billowing around the Denver Broncos. A lot of insiders at least saying they're very intrigued by the Broncos and what they might do. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN reporting that they're looking at wide receivers. But the tight end position could be the next place that they look. But it appears that the Denver Broncos are looking for reinforcements, and they're looking for reinforcements at the skill positions, the receiver positions, tight end, wide receiver. And we'll see what they decide to do. Chris Olave was on the trade market and off the trade market in like a snap of a finger. Like if you were scrolling through Twitter, you would see Chris Olave might be on the trade block, and then like 4 tweets later, it's like, no, he's not. So I don't know who's going to be available. I certainly don't think that the Denver Broncos are going to be inclined to make a huge splash at the trade deadline. If they do make a move, I think it will be very Josh Reynolds-like. Remember when they brought in Josh Reynolds and his end to his Broncos tenure was kind of wild, right? But like that kind of a guy, I just don't think this Broncos team right now is looking at making a huge splash with a veteran. Now, I was just having this conversation with somebody earlier today. I can already see the mock drafts now. 9 out of every 10 mock drafts are going to have the Denver Broncos taking either a receiving tight end or a wide receiver. I think we're going in that direction. I think that George and Sean Payton are going to evaluate things at the end of the year and probably come to the conclusion that they got to address those positions, one of those positions in a meaningful way. But I don't think it's going to be, this past season there was a thought, or this past offseason there was a thought, T. Higgins and Chris Godwin, and they didn't really end up getting to market. But I don't see the Denver Broncos, as much as I would be a proponent of it. I don't think it's a bad idea. I just have gotten to know this Broncos brain trust enough to know that when it comes to veterans on the offensive side of the football, I don't think that they would really like to spend that kind of money. But I could definitely see this team dipping into the draft early to get Bo Nix, another playmaking receiver. So there's a lot of smoke billowing around the Denver Broncos, and we'll see. I think it could come down to the wire. I think Sunday's game might break a tie somehow, right? You look at the Cowboys game and you think that the Broncos have everything they need, but you look at the bigger picture and you're like, yeah, I'd really like, Cortland Sutton's good, and I like what you're seeing with Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims, but if there was just another kind of reliable steady Eddie type receiver, that would be really good for the Denver Broncos. Sunday's game might help make up their mind a little bit if they're on the fence about that, because as headline grabbing of a day Pat Bryant had, it's not like his role was any bigger. I think they like Troy Franklin. I think you're seeing strides with Troy Franklin, but it's as much about where the Broncos are right now as it is about what they have in-house. Like, there's something to be said for we're a leverage call away, perhaps, of being the number one seed in the AFC. We're 6-2. We've knocked off Philadelphia. Maybe there's some people at the Broncos facility that are going, I don't know that I expected us to be at 6-2. That idea of striking while the iron's hot. Clearly, the Broncos have established themselves up to the quasi midpoint of the season as a solid playoff team. And I'm sure they're looking at like, what can we add to just kind of fortify our roster? And I think that's the natural place to go. Mercedes Lewis isn't that guy, but there may be another one coming up in the next week. We'll see, but more and more smoke billowing around the Denver Broncos that they may be making a move at the deadline for someone for Bo Nix to throw the ball to. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Coming up next was Saturday rock bottom for Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes, and if so, where do they go from here? Make sure you cast your vote for this week's Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Right now, it's shaping up to be a race between the Classical Academy flag football team that just won state and Colton Camba, who plays the tackle version of that sport for the Vista Ridge Wolves. By the way, shouts to Vista Ridge. We love to see the teams, the schools get behind it. And I noticed a post on Facebook from the Vista Ridge football team. So that was really cool to see them promoting it and trying to get out the vote for Colton. And that's what this is all about, right? So, yeah, it looks like it's going to come down to those two, but still time for Pam Boyarko of the Palmer Ridge softball team and Anna Collins of the St. Mary's volleyball team. 2 more days. Today, tomorrow, midnight, as the day turns from Thursday to Friday is when the polls close and the winner will be revealed on Friday's edition of the show. It's our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by the fine folks at Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Also, congratulations to Tommy, who picked up a pair of tickets to see Air Force hockey take on Brown Friday night. Your last opportunity, at least from me, I don't know what else is out there, but my last 4-pack of tickets to Air Force Army, I will be giving those away next hour. So be listening for that opportunity. We'll hear from Sean Payton at the top of the hour. It's always tricky with him, right? Especially with this Surtain thing being an injury. But Sean Payton did speak regarding the injury to Pat Surtain, but not directly. It was more who might replace him. And so we'll give you that audio coming up at the top of the hour. But in the meantime, Saturday, I think you have to say that Saturday's game against Utah was rock bottom for CU. I mean, they were down 43-0 at halftime. Worst loss that Deion Sanders has had. And look, you thought, the Pac-12 schedule, his first year was really bad, but this was certainly the lowest point of his tenure. Easily that. I kind of don't know how it can get worse than down 43-0 at halftime. I really don't. And the question now becomes, well, how long is this thing really going to take? Right? To get CU to where Deion Sanders himself has said he's trying to take this program. And Deion Sanders can understand why people may be getting a little impatient with his rebuild of the CU Buffaloes.
There's no one patience in this world. How do we exude patience when we could call up right now and get a pizza delivery right here? That you could call and get a ride waiting outside for you. Everything is expeditious in this country. Everyone wants the quick fix, the quick things. You got mail order brides too, right? You get married, right away. You could get a BBL. You could come in here flat as I don't know what, and leave thick as a snicker. So this is a different country that we live in, man. Ain't nobody got no patience no more. I understand that. And I don't either. I don't have patience as well. I want things done right now because I'm used to getting up there working, putting in the work, and you want that result from the work you put in. It don't oftentimes work like that.
Interesting turn there. I am familiar with some of the things that Deion Sanders talked about there, but he's right. Right? Like, just as a society, he's spot on. The question was about the recent firings in college football and how quickly fans, but more than that, boosters are losing patience. We have seen James Franklin, Brian Kelly, on a local level, Jay Norvell. We have seen some coaches that have been around for a while dismissed before the season's even over, which shows a level of impatience, right? Even if you think that Franklin or Kelly or Norvell aren't the guys, to not wait till the end of the season to do it, to not let the story end before you put the punctuation mark at the end of it, that shows the impatience that is permeating throughout college athletics, especially college football. I don't think Deion Sanders is in any risk of losing his job. Okay, and that's the benefit of, I think, having institutional knowledge, local knowledge, because you know this as well as I do. What he has brought this team back from. Right? You can't completely lose sight of it. How the dynamics in that program have changed so drastically. But there's a question that I've been running through my head the last couple of weeks. Is simply being relevant enough? The attendance, I know Deion Sanders was a little bit perturbed this spring about how attendance was down for the spring game. But look, this isn't Tuscaloosa or Baton Rouge. Like, we're not those. Colorado is not one of those places. College football is not king. It's not the most important thing. Yeah, in Boulder, that's what they have is CU, but think about, and this is true of Denver, this is true of Colorado Springs, this is true of Boulder and Fort Collins. There is so much other stuff to do, especially that time of year. I can't get too up in arms about declining spring football game attendance. And Deion should know that. Right? Boulder loves the Buffs. A lot of people in this state love the Colorado Buffaloes. Not like Bama fans love the Crimson Tide. Not like people in Baton Rouge love LSU. I'm sorry. It's a different level. I'm not blaming anybody because we are a football crazed state. We just usually, where that manifests itself is at Empower Field. It's not disinterest, but there are a lot of other stuff going on. What matters is Saturdays. And maybe someone can give me a different firsthand account. Folsom's full still, right? On game days. So people are still coming out and supporting. But those people and the people who were spurred to action by Deion Sanders to donate to the collective and all of this kind of stuff to help Colorado get going again. I think their patience is greater than the patience of people around Penn State, people around LSU. I think even more so than around people in Fort Collins. If we're being honest, CSU has, been trying to build towards something for many years. CU has been lying dormant. So the patience is always going to be greater in Boulder. But you just wonder at what point is simply being relevant not enough? That the TV viewership numbers are not enough. That to be able to say Deion Sanders is your head coach is not enough. And we're really going to see it now because this season is going to be a failure. And that's based on the bar that Deion Sanders set. Right? Not when he first came in. That's a different story. This year, it was going to a bowl game and winning for Miss Peggy. I don't know that they're going to get to a bowl. Or I should say this. I don't know if they're going to be bowl eligible. You know, when bowl season rolls around, there's so many that there are a few exceptions made because there aren't enough bowl eligible teams. And CU would certainly be one of the first names on the call sheet if there aren't enough bowl eligible teams. But they got to win, what, 3 or 4? Just to be eligible? With the results that they've had, and not just the results, the way they look in a lot of these games, is there any real confidence that CU is going to be able to get 3 wins? There's always firsts when you're Deion Sanders here, and this is going to be an unfortunate first. The first time that you really look at a season and you say they weren't what they were supposed to be. We got a little carried away after the non-conference in year 1, right? To be fair. Year 2, I think, obviously the Alamo Bowl was bad, but overall, the Buffaloes were in the conversation till the very end to get to the Big 12 title game. They got a Heisman Trophy winner out of it. This year, they're going to fall short of real expectation. And reasonable, by the way, reasonable expectation. Right? It wasn't about CU winning the Big 12 or going to the college football playoff. It's about the way I framed it, and I don't know how many people saw it the same way I did. I did just say you can't let the bottom fall out. And that's exactly what's happening. Without Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, the bottom is falling out. This was supposed to be the best team top to bottom that Deion Sanders has had in Boulder. And they don't look to be the most talented team. Not even close. And is there anything about Julian Lewis still not playing that worries anybody? Because you can look at the Utah game as kind of where it went off the rails or rock bottom, but hasn't looked like the Colorado Buffaloes were truly turning around their season before that. And Julian Lewis still not ready to play. And now he's looked at like he's got to be the savior here. And that wasn't supposed to be the case. It was supposed to be a better team that Julian Lewis stepped into. So but I go back to my question. When is being relevant not enough? It's not now. It's not even after this season. But there will come a point where Folsom will not be full, where the money flowing to the collective will start to slow down. And in today's world of college football, even in Boulder, it happens quicker than it used to. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, what does Sean Payton think about the contenders to replace Pat Surtain? Chris Abrams-Drain and Jahdae Barron. You'll get his thoughts on both next. Welcome in hour 2 on this Wednesday. Appreciate you watching the show on a daily basis on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. The handle, the same in all of those places at XTRA Sports 1300. While you're there, like, subscribe, and drop a comment, because not everything in today's world of sports media is interactive. We still are. And I'd love to hear from you. Or you could text or call into the show at 719-247-1313. Just a friendly reminder that it is fall back this weekend. Don't forget to turn your clocks back. I'm all about an extra hour of sleep as somebody who does not take full advantage of sleep. Having one just gifted to me at a time that I actually am usually asleep is a nice thing. I don't love the darkness. But just a reminder, don't want it to creep up on you. And if you were wondering whether this would affect the Denver Broncos, and I don't even know who brought this up. I hope somebody didn't ask him this question about how fall back will impact how they play in Houston. Oh, boy. But Sean Payton spoke on it, said with the clocks turning back, the Broncos actually playing at noon Denver time, and they practice at noon Denver time. This is getting to be a bit much. Right? First, it was the records of teams going on the road the week before they go to London. And then it was the record of the teams coming back from London, playing a game immediately the following week or getting a bye week. And then even when you thought all that was done, they had the great comeback against the Giants, and Sean Payton was talking about the record of teams after a great, like there was that many. What's the sample size for a team coming back from 19 down in the fourth quarter? Like, I would love to see just how many games there are that has happened for that record to be handed to Sean Payton, and for him to be like, oh, well, this is something we're going to have to be mindful of. And now with the clock change, and he's done this, right? The painting of the logos on the field. Like, there's something to be said for someone as detail-oriented as Sean Payton, and is absolutely part of the reason he's been as successful as he's been. But it is a little bit much. It is a little bit much at times, I will say that. But unfortunately, not everything can be controlled by Sean Payton. Like injuries to his best player. Pat Surtain with the pectoral injury. Now there's more on this. At least Pat Surtain said on his podcast he'd be back in no time. That's just something you say. What does no time actually mean? Because you're definitely out for Houston. And now there are some NFL insiders saying that he is expected to miss the next 3 games at least. I said yesterday, Jordan Schultz reporting 4 to 6 said you be wise to look at that timeline. And now here we are. It went from week to week to now, well, definitely the next 3. Or probably the next 3. I don't want to say definitely. Probably the next 3. And you know what the third game of that sequence is. So it's Kansas City, by the way. If you didn't know, a game that will most likely go a long way to deciding who the AFC West champion is. So there's even more, if that's true, if you take that and look, there's a reason why the Broncos aren't putting him on IR, because as soon as he's ready to go, they're bringing him back. But this feels like the Dre Greenlaw situation all over again. They did the same thing there, and they waited, and then they ended up putting him on IR. I hope that that's not the case for Pat Surtain. But I've seen this already this season, as you have with the Denver Broncos. But if it turns out to be true that Pat Surtain will not play against the Kansas City Chiefs, there's even more of a reason or more of an urgency, I suppose, to making sure that the Broncos figure out what they're going to do without Pat Surtain and at least have that button down, both in terms of scheme, but also in terms of personnel. And I think the scheme is pretty straightforward. And I talked about this with Cameron Dean on KKTV 11 last night. I think you're going to see more zone. You're going to see more of a collective effort instead of everybody just going, Pat, you hold down one side of the field and the rest of us will get the other side of the field. You can't do that. So it's going to be a collective. It's not going to be Riley Moss shadowing the best receiver. It's going to be a group effort. And when you think group effort, you think zone. In basketball and in football. That's what the Denver Broncos will be doing. But who will be a part of that? That's really the bigger question. Chris Abrams-Drain came in for Pat Surtain on Sunday, had a lot of tackles, but every time he was targeted, a Dallas Cowboys receiver caught the pass. Here's Sean Payton on Chris Abrams-Drain.
Well, I think two things that stand out, and I'm looking at him right now. He's extremely intelligent, and I would say he might have the best hands on this team. He's got elite ball skills, and so now he's quiet, but real good football instincts and really good ball skills.
And that's important, obviously. But let's look at the success of this Broncos defense. They have largely done it without intercepting an opposing quarterback. Having somebody that has the ability to do that would be nice, but the Broncos defense, I think, has gotten by without creating a lot of turnovers because despite some of the big plays, and the Broncos are still the most penalized team in the NFL, their defense gives up a ton of penalty yardage. But for the most part, they're able to recover after a defensive pass interference or a defensive holding because you got to get all the way down the field, right? You can't get to the end zone with all the time with the pass interference penalty, right? So if the Broncos are called for defensive pass interference around the 50, you still got what? 35 yards that you still got to travel against this defense. So they're able to recover. That's why, as problematic as these penalties are and how it's not sustainable, and Sean Payton talked about that, he called it unprecedented, with the hypothetical that if the Broncos achieved everything they set out to achieve from a team standpoint, that they would do it being the most penalized team in the league. He said that would be unprecedented. So it's something that the Broncos have got to work out. But it does not short circuit defensive drives the way it does the offense, because that defense is so good. But getting back to Chris Abrams-Drain, I think I would be more concerned with who covers receivers better, who keeps guys in front of them better between Chris Abrams-Drain and Jahdae Barron. Speaking of the rookie, here's Sean Payton on him. And no, just to preface this is a different clip, and he is absolutely not talking about Chris Abrams-Drain, although it's going to sound very similar.
Yeah, he's doing well. He's got really good ball skills, and fortunately, it's a position we've got some depth. We've drafted to it, so we'll kind of go from there.
They both have elite ball skills. But Sean Payton, even though he hates to talk about injuries, he gets short with reporters right there at the end, gives you a little insight into his thought process. Not necessarily who's starting, who's going to actually take the place of Pat Surtain, but just his thinking about losing Pat Surtain is that he feels like there's depth, and you change up the scheme a little bit. And I talked about this yesterday. You know, the Broncos pass rushers are going to become even more important, but that's their best unit. So I understand why Sean Payton right now doesn't seem to be too worried about how the Broncos are going to deal with this. Now, fast forward a couple of weeks and see how he is the week of the Kansas City game if it is true that Pat Surtain isn't playing. But this week and then the short week to play Vegas, I understand why Sean Payton feels like they'll be able to get by if you're reading between the lines. But it's still a question of who he's going to choose. Who's the guy that ultimately he decides to go with? And you drafted Jahdae Barron in the first round. That means something. That means something in terms of what you think of him as a player, both now and in the future. But it also means something about his readiness. This is a win now team. This isn't a team that's stockpiling talent for 3 to 5 years from now. This is a team that utilizes their top picks on guys that can help them immediately. And because the Broncos defense has been as good as they've been, there hasn't been a need to rush Barron out onto the field. They've used him in certain situations, and I think he's popped up a couple of times. You don't notice every time he's on the field, but it seems like every game he does something. Tackle for a loss, an interception, breaking up a pass. It would strike me as odd if having an entire week to game plan that you can't find a way that you don't decide to put in your first round pick. It would be very curious if the Broncos did roll out Chris Abrams' drain. I understand the sudden change of Pat Surtain's injury, and you got to put somebody in, and you don't want to, upset the apple cart. Everybody else knows their roles. Don't move Riley Moss here and Jaquan McMillan and move everything around just because Surtain got injured. And especially there was no real reason to do it, even more so because you were controlling the game against Dallas. So I understand putting in drain, but now you got a whole week. You got a whole week to get this guy, Jahdae Barron, prepped and ready to go for his role. And he's not going to be the most important corner on this team. That's Riley Moss now. But I feel like if you're going 3 corners, which at times you're going to need more, if we just look at when Broncos have 2 corners and a nickel corner, feels like to me it should be Moss on one side, Barron with the other, and then McMillan as that third corner. And if you need a fourth, you heard Sean Payton likes Chris Abrams' drain. But this should be we have to see his performance, whether we label it a breakout game, but this should be the showcase game for Jahdae Barron. This should be, here's your moment. Nobody wanted this moment to happen because it means that your best player's hurt, but here it is, and now here's an opportunity for your first-round pick to step in and show what he's got. And we'll see how the Broncos play it on Sunday against the Houston Texans. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll talk about the pass rushers, and one pass rusher in particular, Nick Benito. How's he doing? And somebody doing the same job he is just got paid a whole lot more money than Benito did. Tell you about that as well next here on Extra Sports 1300. Saturday, Air Force hosting rival Army. First time in what feels like forever. Man, Army hasn't visited Colorado Springs in a bit, but they are this Saturday morning, 10 a.m. kick. If you want to be at Falcons Stadium for that one, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to be. 4 tickets will go to the 13th texter to text Beat Army, because we want to get in the spirit of things. Beat Army and your name to 719-247-1313. 4 tickets. The last 4 I've got. And then I'm out. Got tickets to other things, but no more Air Force Army tickets. From me, anyway. One other item from the Broncos injury report today. We're so focused on Pat Surtain, and not surprisingly, he did not practice today with the pectoral injury. Marvin Mims has a concussion. That may be of news to you. So I have to see how that progresses. Because Marvin Mims, obviously a big part, even though, you know, he's not, his role isn't Cortland Sutton's role on this team, but a very important dynamic playmaker, change of pace, and let's not forget about the field position battle and what he does to affect that with his punt and kick returns. So we'll monitor that as the end of the week approaches. Marvin Mims not practicing today because of a concussion. Elsewhere in the NFL, Aiden Hutchinson just got absolutely paid. 4 years, $180 million, making him not the highest paid pass rusher, but one of. So good on him. Anybody that could take that is willing to take probably below market value, they deserve a tip of the cap. I know they make a lot of money anyway, and Aiden Hutchinson's family is not going to, you know, be suffering with this, but still, you have the opportunity to make more money. You sacrifice a little bit of it for the greater good, and you look at what the Detroit Lions are doing. They're locking everybody up. They'll have this team as currently constructed for a while. But what did I say when Nick Bonitto signed? And it was the same thing I said when Pat Surtain signed. The advantage of getting these deals done before you absolutely have to, or before you let a guy hit the free agent market, because I know they were a little bit late with Bonitto, but that was just because he's a second-round pick, doesn't get the fifth-year option, all that kind of stuff. But they get his deal done at $106 million. 106 or 108? 106. Man, I can't read my writing today. Far less than Aiden Hutchinson is now making. But this is just the way these contracts go. You get yours done, and the Lions could have waited another year, so they're going to be the beneficiaries of it because there's going to be a pass rusher that will certainly easily eclipse what Aiden Hutchinson got, and the Lions will be sitting there with a huge smile on their face knowing that they got Aiden Hutchinson at, in NFL terms, a bargain price. But now the Broncos look even better for getting Nick Bonitto's deal done. Because you look at their numbers for sacks, right, which is the main thing that both Hutchinson and Bonitto do. They both came into the league at the same time. So this is a like-for-like comparison. Aiden Hutchinson has had all of 3.5 sacks, more than Nick Bonitto has in his career. And he's getting paid $21 million per each of those sacks. That's what it about averages out to. So the Broncos look really good here in locking up Nick Bonito. And look, Aiden Hutchinson's a better player. Like that's not the conversation we're having here. But they both play a premium position. They both have one of the 3 most important skills you could possibly have on a football team: throwing the football, catching the football, and getting after the quarterback. Those are the 3 most important things that you can do. They both do that third thing, and that's what they're most known for. And Nick Bonito is getting paid over the same amount of time as Hutchinson, quite a bit less, without having a big disparity in production. Aiden Hutchinson, I think, if we're just looking at the players, deserves to be paid more than Nick Bonito. But we know the way that this works, it's not always that you get only top of market or you get paid more than this other guy because you're better than him. You get paid better than the last guy because you're the next guy. That's the way this works. Hutchinson is a better player than Nick Bonito, but just ask yourself, would you take Aiden Hutchinson at $180 million or Nick Bonito at $106? It's a good price the Broncos got Nick Bonito at. But Aiden Hutchinson's really good. I think the defensive player of the year probably comes down to those 2 guys. But I was looking because we had this conversation a few weeks ago. Nick Bonito's kind of fallen off the pace here to set the single season NFL sack record, which I believe I predicted that he would fall off the pace. I didn't think that he would be able to break the single season record if for no other reason than the fact that there are other capable pass rushers on his team. But he has fallen off that pace. He's even fallen off the pace to break Von Miller's single season franchise record for sacks. He's not that far away, but he's got 8 now. You double that to get to 16 games. That's 16 sacks, and he would need, 3? He would need a 3-sack game, week 18, to break the single season franchise record. So there's still a chance, but at some point, Nick Bonito needs to have one of those eye-popping performances that help propel him into this situation where we're even having a conversation about him surpassing Von Miller in anything. So could that be Sunday? And I was thinking about this because there's been some conversation about CJ Stroud on why he seemed to regress last year. And part of the thinking was, well, his offensive line is terrible and he's getting sacked a ton. Case in point, he was the 10th most sacked quarterback in 2023. Only Caleb Williams was sacked more, and you know what Caleb Williams' rookie year looked like. Only Caleb Williams got sacked more than CJ Stroud last year. This year, you want to know why CJ Stroud? And I have questions about the teams they have played, like you probably do as you're looking at the schedule. But why does CJ Stroud look closer to 2 years ago CJ Stroud than last year? He's been sacked the 14th most of any quarterback in the league. Middle of the road. Live with that. Right? With the team that likes to throw the ball a lot. 14th most sacked quarterback. That's even better than when he was his rookie year when he was taking the league by storm. So that's a big reason. But also tied to it, the time it's taking for him to get rid of the football. This year, his time to get rid of the football, if we assume that the Texans line has gotten better because CJ Stroud is sacked less, Sean Payton would be very quick to point out that sack is a quarterback stat. So, okay, if you want to go with the Sean Payton school of thought, CJ Stroud's release time is closer to what it was 2 years ago than it was last year. And it jumped up a fair amount. I know we're talking about tenths and hundredths of a second, but in a game as fast as football, that means everything, right? So it looks closer to what it was his rookie year. He's getting the ball out faster. But he's going to have to get the ball out even faster against the Denver Broncos defense. He is averaging 2.68 seconds to get rid of the football. Quarterbacks this year against the Denver Broncos have about 2.5 seconds to get rid of the football. So if there is a speed of thought going on with CJ Stroud right now to where he's making decisions faster, he's more decisive, he's going to have to be arguably the most decisive he's been all year in order to avoid the Broncos pass rush. But that kind of got me thinking a little bit. The question of why hasn't Bo Nix suffered the same fate CJ Stroud did in year 2? Right there, Bo Nix, in a lot of ways, he wasn't Jaden Daniels, but still in a world without Jaden Daniels, a lot of people will probably be fawning over the rookie year that Bo Nix had. And there's always that question about whether a second-year quarterback is going to regress. CJ Stroud did to an extent. Not all on him, but just the numbers weren't as good. Why isn't that the case with Bo Nix? I went back to the stopwatch. Not literally, but figuratively. Bo Nix's release time is quicker than it was last year. Whereas CJ Stroud's release time took longer. And it's just one thing. That's all. I'm pulling one thing, one piece of evidence. You could talk about the running game being a big reason why. But Bo Nix, the fact of the matter is Bo Nix is getting rid of the football faster than he was even last year. And that's him. He deserves credit for that. But you go to the conversation leading up to the Dallas game about the play calling. Oh, the screen game. There's so many screens the Broncos are throwing. Let Bo Nix cook. You don't think part of the reason why he's getting the ball out so quickly and therefore he's not suffering the same regression that we saw from CJ Stroud don't you think it has something to do with the play calling? I get it. You could take it both ways, right? Is there more room for Sean Payton to trust Bo Nix to throw the ball downfield? Are there more chances that he could give them? Maybe. But part of the reason why Bo Nix is getting rid of the ball quicker is because a lot of the Broncos offense is designed for him to get the ball out quicker. So if you believe that there's more to Bo Nix in terms of a downfield thrower, then you look at it and say Sean Payton's hampering him by calling all of these screen passes and short passes. But at the same time, the results are bearing out. He's getting rid of the ball quicker, and he's not taking sacks. And the Broncos are 6-2 right now. So it's the eye of the beholder, really. But you have to acknowledge that Sean Payton's play calling is part of the reason why Bo Nix is getting rid of the ball quicker. And then here's the last piece of this expedition down the rabbit hole I was going down today. Bo Nix is going to have to get rid of the ball faster than he does typically. Both of these quarterbacks are going to have to be a little bit more decisive on Sunday. Because while Bo Nix is taking 2.78 seconds to throw the ball, Houston's defense, Houston's pass rush, allows you only 2.58 seconds to get rid of it. I know it sounds like just this minuscule difference, but I'm telling you, in the world of the NFL, that's a big difference. This Houston pass rush is the biggest concern that the Broncos should have going into Sunday, even more so than not having Pat Surtain. That comes later. But the biggest concern of Sunday's game is the pass rush of the Houston Texans. And it's going to force Bo Nix to be more decisive, to be quicker with the football than he has been on average this season. And it's just another reason that Sean Payton, he's going to stick with the game plan. Dallas was the game where if Sean Payton was going to really let Bo Nix air it out, that was the game. Against Houston, it is going to be very much your regularly scheduled programming when it comes to this Denver Broncos offense. Because Sean Payton is looking at film and looking at the numbers when it comes to this Houston pass rush. And he knows that he needs his second-year quarterback to get rid of the ball. How do you do that? You tell him to get rid of the ball, first of all. And second of all, you draw up plays to where Bo Nix doesn't have to hang on to it. So that's really the matchup on Sunday. It's the pass rushes of these two defenses against quarterbacks in years 2 and 3 of their careers that this year are getting the ball out faster than they did the year prior. 719-24-7, 1313, more Drive Time Sports after this. Congrats to Ryan B., who took home the 4-pack of tickets to see Air Force host Army on Saturday at Falcon Stadium. And dovetailing off of that, it's a full day of activities if you choose to participate, because Falcon Alley will be going on before the game. I'll be out there. Don't let that, deter you. It will be a fun time, and I'm not the only person in there. But there's Falcon Alley before the game itself, which is the main event, obviously. And then there's the Whataburger Bring Home the W post-game party at their Monument location. If you wear your Falcons gear, you'll get a free small shake with any purchase when you dine in. Plus, Red Mountain Highway will be there performing their own blend of Colorado country. It will be a party to celebrate, we hope, fingers crossed, an Air Force win over their Service Academy rival. That's the Bring Home the W post-game party at Whataburger in Monument. Super easy. It's right off of I-25 in Monument, in case you don't head north that often. You can't miss it and be out there. So got a whole day planned for you. If you are a Falcons fan, or even if you're not, you should join the club. It's a fun time. Brett texts this in. I know what you're doing, Brett, but I'll play along. Ryan, we get it. We will never be as good as the Kansas City Chiefs, and Bo Nix will always be limited, and our head coach will always be a jerk. I'll clean up your language. Go on. I'm not look, Bo Nix is a topic of conversation. I'm not justifying what I'm talking about. But what I will say is that first part is an all-out lie. That is not what I am saying at all. In fact, I think the biggest weakness of Kansas City goes right to the biggest strength of the Denver Broncos. Their pass rush against the Chiefs' offensive line. I'm not saying that not having Pat Surtain automatically says Broncos can't beat the Kansas City Chiefs in 3 weeks. All I'm saying is that's the game coming up here where Pat Surtain, you got to get him back. Right? To give yourself the best chance to beat Kansas City. That's the game where having your best player and the best defensive player in the league would help. I'll stop just short of saying it's a necessity, because I do think that there are other ways. And look, that game is 3 weeks away. I don't know what this remade Broncos secondary is going to look like. How are they going to line things up schematically? Is it going to be Barron or Drain? How do they perform in all of this? We don't know. 3 weeks is an eternity in the NFL world. Except when you're trying to count the days till your best player returns. But the point is, we don't even know what the Broncos look like without Pat Surtain. Once we get an idea, then we can start to discuss whether the Broncos missing Pat Surtain will be the difference. Not having him doesn't help. Doesn't make them more apt to beat Kansas City. I will say that, but I don't know how I feel about the Chiefs game yet. We got a couple of games before to evaluate what the Broncos look like going into that game. And look, the perception around this Broncos team has changed a couple of times this season, right? So who knows what happens in the next 2 games and how everyone feels about this Broncos team going into that game. But that was the game. They're like, all right, get by with Houston, get by with Vegas, but it would really be great if Pat Surtain was back for that game that Sean Payton himself. You want to talk about me harping on this? How about Sean Payton talking about winning the division in the Kansas City Chiefs every chance he gets? That game's a big game, and it's a credit to the Denver Broncos that it will be a big game. Maybe the biggest between those two teams in, gosh, I don't know how long. When is it? And here's the thought. I know it's all about the Texans, but since Brett set me down this road, when is the last time that a Broncos Chiefs game had equal stakes for both teams? And those stakes being high stakes. As I think of the Broncos and Chiefs rivalry, it's either the Broncos own Kansas City or Kansas City owns the Broncos. That's really what it's been like for years. I can't, off the top of my head, remember the last time. The one that the image that goes through my head, though, of Broncos Chiefs and both teams having an equal amount on the line and that amount being a lot. I'm remembering when Tony Gonzalez was double covered in the end zone, and yet the ball was thrown to him at the end of the game. That was the year, of course, that the Denver Broncos went on to win the Super Bowl. There has to be another game, though. There has to be another meeting between these two teams where there was close to as much on the line as will be at Empower Field in a few weeks. I just can't off the top of my head. It's always been like, yep, Broncos division, forget everybody else is playing for second place, including the Kansas City Chiefs. And then what it's been like for the last length of Mahomes' career, everyone else is playing for second behind Kansas City. Because of the Surtain injury, I don't think there will be a sentiment around Broncos country to fast forward to that game. In fact, if there could be like another game, like how the flex rules work. Can you flex the game with like Jacksonville and make Kansas City the fourth game from now? But after the Dallas game, and I felt this way too after watching that Dallas game, like, let's get to the Chiefs Broncos. Both of these teams are playing better football than they have all year. Let's get to it. But now it's like, hold on, slow up a bit. Let's see if we can't get Pat Surtain back healthy. For what it's worth, Brett, Tom is in your corner, says, thank you, Brett, for expressing what we are all thinking. So I'm thinking Broncos, according to you, the Broncos will never be as good as Kansas City, although I've never said that. Bo Nix will always be limited. Well, yeah, I guess. If you want to put it that way, and our head coach will always be a jerk. Well, I don't look, Sean Payton in this form existed in New Orleans. But I could counter that and say, you always think the Chiefs are overrated, Chiefs demise. Bo Nix is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Like, look, opinions are opinions, and that's where we go from there. Both of you, like the two of you getting in lockstep with one another, that is, I'm not surprised by that, but I very much appreciate both of you tuning in on a daily basis and interacting on a daily basis. And I'm sure you're not alone in feeling that way. But what do you want me to get on here and lie to you? No. Would never do that to you. 719-24-7-1313. We'll hit the 3 stories that are driving the show right after this. Hello there, hour 3 on this Wednesday. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, or perhaps you're watching the show on our social media platforms, whether it be YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. We're like everywhere. I can't even keep up with all the places this show is being sent out to, but anyone in any of those places listening, I very much appreciate it. If you would like to interact with the show, and as last segment showed, I will read. I don't duck text messages. 719-247-1313. You can even call in. That still exists, by the way. Calling into a sports talk radio program. Just saying. You know, it's the way we grew up on this medium. But interact with the show, whatever's comfortable for you. 719-247-1313. Perhaps you have a reaction to the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, we start with probably as much as Sean Payton will talk about the injury to Pat Surtain. And this question that was posed to him wasn't even really about Pat Surtain. It was about Jahdae Barron. Take a listen.
Yeah, he's doing well. He's got really good ball skills. And fortunately, it's a position we've got some depth. We've drafted to it. So we'll kind of go from there.
Sean Payton, you could call it putting on a brave face. You can call it having the utmost confidence in what his team is, that they can mitigate the damage done by the pec injury to Pat Surtain that is now being reported that he will at least miss the next 3 games: Sunday at Houston, the Vegas game, and then the Kansas City game. And then they would have the bye week. So that's the latest report. We'll all wait day to day and find out. But the question becomes, who takes that spot? Right? The role of number 1 corner, if you want to call it that, on the depth chart is Riley Moss. But somebody's got to step in. Sunday it was Chris Abrams-Drain. A lot of tackles, but also was targeted a few times and did not break up any passes. So tough spot to be thrust into. So I'm not going to read too much into what Chris Abrams-Drain did, good or bad. I just think if this isn't the game to kind of let the rookie showcase what he's got, then I don't know what it will be. I mean, we're at the midway point of the season, and they've been kind of slow playing, Jahdae Barron, which, look, you can't argue with the results, but now you're in a situation where you're down a man and you're down the man, and the decisions you make for Sunday and beyond are going to be scrutinized. They're going to be important. I think Barron's got to be the guy that steps in there. And look, it's the NFL. To think that only 3 corners are going to play against Houston or any other team, of course, both of these guys are going to get on the field. Of course they are. And their roles are maybe not even going to be completely clear to people watching on TV. I just think this has to be a game where we notice Jahdae Barron more than we ever have in any game this season. And that would mean he's out on the field more. That would mean he's out there covering one of the more important receivers for the Houston Texans. I think this is his opportunity. It's an opportunity for the Broncos to really show what they got with their first-round pick. And Sean Payton went on to say, I'm not going to tell you whether I'm going to play him in the slot or outside. And that's also part of this conversation too, because if Jahdae Barron's playing inside, then where's Jaquan McMillan playing? So if Barron plays, I got to believe it's on the outside, right? But he has that ability. In fact, I thought by now Jahdae Barron would have taken over for Jaquan McMillan, if I'm being 100% honest with you. But the Broncos are in win now mode. And they are a team that relies on their veterans to get them to a 6-2 record. So that's all well and good, but now there's something happening where you got to make a decision about your rookie. And I will eagerly await Sean Payton's decision for Sunday's game against the Houston Texans. Let's go to hockey for story number 2.
Turnover here. Drop pass. Olofsson! Yeah! Throw the chapeau! He is officially Victor Olofsson!
It's pretty good from Connor McGahey. You got to say it. I think he's been sitting on that for the entirety of the season. But Victor Olofsson broke out with a hat trick last night in the Avalanche's 8-4 win over the New Jersey Devils, exacting a measure of revenge from Sunday's overtime loss. But the bigger story, and Victor Olofsson is a part of that story, but the bigger story of last night, the Avs were 4 for 6 on the power play. The biggest storyline so far this season has been how putrid the Avs results on the power play have been. Let's call it for what it is. And it's not even what makes last night kind of shocking, if we're being honest about it, is that one, New Jersey came in with one of the best penalty kill units in the NHL. But also, there wasn't a slow trickle of the power play figuring it out in terms of the results, right? 0 for the weekend between the Boston game and the Jersey game. They were 1 for 8 against Carolina. They were 0 for on the power play against Utah. So it wasn't even like they scored 1 here or scored 1 every game and we're just waiting for them to break out with multiple goals. Like, this kind of came out of nowhere. But it can happen like that sometimes. And we know that the Avalanche have been trying to do things. They're with Dave Haxtell in there. It started with him firing Ray Bennett, bringing in Haxtell to bring some new ideas. They're trying to implement those new ideas. You see a little bit of a difference in the way they go about their business on the power play. You've seen Jared Bednar move guys around, Victor Olofsson in that bumper spot, Valerian Nichushkin being elevated from the second penalty power play unit to the first. So the Avs have been trying a lot of different things, but they just haven't had the results. So to go 4 for 6, it's kind of crazy and not something that you could foresee happening. It was only a matter of time, I think, before the Avs started to break through, right? But it wasn't only a matter of time before they went 4 of 6 on a power play. But they did last night, and now where you go from here is, okay, did they figure some stuff out? Did they get that last piece of the power play right? And now they're going to keep ascending when it comes to this unit, and there's nowhere to go but up, being 30th in the NHL. And do they get to a point where we can say that their power play unit is somewhat comparable to what they are 5-on-5, which is the best team in hockey? Because in order to get out of the West, you got to check every box. Right? To win a Stanley Cup, you got to check every box. Should say. Because the Oilers, I don't know how well they've checked off the goaltending box, and yet they've gone out of the West. But to win a Stanley Cup, especially, put it that way, going through the West, you got to check every box. Avs can't have the 20th best power play, the 15th best power play. They had the 8th best power play last season and couldn't do anything against Dallas. But the first step is you got to do something. And the Avs did a lot more than that last night. And I just think you look at these goals, Marty Necas's goal, the first one was spectacular because that was, I don't know how he was able to fit that puck in past Jacob Markstrom. That was just a phenomenal shot. But the other goals, just decisiveness. That's all I saw. Just the Avs moving the puck around and then a player making up his mind and saying, I'm going to shoot it. And whatever happens after this, happens after this. And they got Jacob Markstrom 5-hole a couple of times. And Jared Bednar said it after the game, not just that the guys that were shooting were decisive. Everybody on that top power play unit was willing to shoot the puck. And when the Avs power play has been not great, it's looked like some guys are like, nah, I'm just going to facilitate. I'm not going to be the guy to take the shot. I'm going to let Kale or Nathan McKinnon do it. I think there's been a little bit of that, right? Because with the power play before the Mikko Rantanen trade, you had Makar, McKinnon, and Rantanen. None of them shy about taking the shot. But now you add in Necas and you add Olofsson. You elevate Valeri Nichushkin, not a guy that you would think would be shy about it, but it's a different, especially with Olofsson and Necas. Do they feel like they can be, that they're empowered to take the shot? But the power play, I mean, it's more complicated to actually produce on the power play, but in terms of the game plan and how you succeed on the power play, it's not that difficult to grasp. Move the puck and don't hesitate to shoot it. And make sure that you shoot it. And that's what the Avs did last night. Not going to be that way every night, but given how bad the power play results have been, a 4-for-6 night was, I'm sure, quite welcome if you're an Avs fan. Let's get back to football for story number 3.
Everything is expeditious in this country. Everyone wants the quick fix, the quick things. You got mail order brides too, right? You get married, right away. You could get a BBL. You could come in here flat as I don't know what, and leave thick as a Snicker. So this is a different country that we live in, man. Ain't nobody got no patience no more.
That is Deion Sanders responding to a question about the impatience that is being shown by a few universities that have college football programs over the past few weeks. Obviously, CSU firing Jay Norvell just up the road. But then you have James Franklin, you have Brian Kelly. And for them to be terminated in the middle of a season shows that level of impatience. But this is a roundabout way of getting Deion Sanders to give an answer about perhaps his own mortality as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. Because if Saturday against Utah was not rock bottom, I'd hate to see rock bottom. I'd hate to see the low point of Deion Sanders in this CU program. And with the way this season has gone, it does not look like they're going to reach anybody's expectation, anybody's optimistic expectation, reasonably optimistic expectation. What did Deion say? Make it to a bowl game and win the bowl game for Miss Peggy. That was it. Didn't seem like a lot for what was supposedly the most talented team in 3 years that Deion Sanders has had. And they look like the least talented. Now, Boulder isn't Penn State, isn't LSU. And given where Deion Sanders has brought this CU program from, I don't think that we really need to ask the same question in terms of, is Deion Sanders, this is like, no way. No way. But there will come a point where just being relevant isn't enough. Right? And will we get to that point with Deion Sanders and Boulder? Because so far, I think overall it's been, come on, look at where this CU program was. But eventually those fans that are still packing Folsom Field are going to want results. They're going to want to root on a competitive football team, a team that is competing for the college football playoff. Eventually they will want that. When is that? But also the reality of Deion Sanders' situation, is let's say that the boosters and the fans don't get to that point for years. Right? Let's say that. Let's say it's not even a question about the money going to the collective drying up or Folsom Field being half empty. Is Deion Sanders going to be able to see this thing through? We've gone from, is Deion Sanders going to want to go somewhere else, the NFL, a bigger school, and to his credit, he's shot down those things almost every chance he gets. The only little crack there was to be able to coach both of his sons in the NFL. But now it's shifted to the real life things that are going on with Deion Sanders, his health. Is he going to be in Boulder long enough to get this team not just back to relevance, because I think he's already done that, but get them back to truly competing and winning conference titles? How long is this thing going to take? That's really the question that's behind both of those things. How long is this going to take? Because the thought was that this would be a step in another step forward, because the bottom wouldn't fall out. That despite losing Shador and Travis, that they were going to be able to maintain. They haven't. The bottom has fallen out. So now you wonder just how far they are away, and if Julian Lewis is really the only thing that is, once he gets in, everything's going to be okay. It's kind of things you think about after a game like that Utah game. I don't think that Deion Sanders needs to worry about people's patience in Boulder wearing thin anytime soon. But he talked yesterday about his own level of impatience. And I think what he's dealt with and is dealing with health-wise adds to his own impatience. 719-24/7. 1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Your chance to win Air Force hockey tickets for Saturday's game against Brown coming up next. Air Force hockey hosting Brown this weekend, Friday and Saturday night. If you would like to be there at Cadet Ice Arena for the 5:05 puck drop on Saturday, perhaps make it a double dip with some Air Force football. Be the 13th texter to text Falcons in your name to 719-247-1313, and you will pick up a pair of tickets to see Air Force hosting Brown on Saturday. Getting a little spicy in the comments, but I'm here for it. We're talking sports here. We're not talking politics or deciding the fate of the world. It's all in good fun. Sean on the gram, those two guys talking to you, Tom and Brett, are probably the same guys that thought Drew Lock was the second coming of Peyton Manning. Nix hasn't proven anything yet. Hopefully he will, but no one can anoint Nix as a franchise quarterback. Let's make this about me, please. Look, I don't recall Brett or Tom saying that Bo Nix would be, the best quarterback in the league or anything like that. But what we have here and have had here is a difference of opinion on Bo Nix's ceiling. That's just what we have. I have my opinion. Others have theirs. And we share them with playful banter on a day-to-day basis. But, Sean's right. I don't think we've totally decided who Bo Nix is. But I have said that I don't foresee him becoming one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the league like Sean Payton said he would be. I don't see it. But we're even having a conversation about the way that Sean Payton is using Bo Nix. We haven't even completely nailed down what Bo Nix should be doing week in and week out. I think that Sean Payton has evaluated Bo Nix as a passer and says, this is the type of passing game that I want. I want him to get out of the pocket. I want him to get rid of the ball quickly. And as long as Sean Payton's the head coach, that's not going to change a whole lot. I don't think this is about biding time until Bo Nix takes a massive step forward. I think this is Sean Payton saying the way that Bo Nix plays in my offense, he's going to be looked at as one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the league. I don't agree that he will be looked at that way. And I've said that the only way he's going to be looked at like that, I remember the show after Sean Payton made those comments, I said, Bo Nix has got to find his superpower. And his superpower is not necessarily not taking sacks. I mean, that's a good thing. But I think it's his running ability. I think when we look at these 4 quarterbacks that we hold in higher regard than anybody else, Mahomes, Lamar, Allen, and Burrow, they all bring some kind of superpower. With Joe Burrow, it's how unflappable he is. With Josh Allen, it's this cannon of an arm that he has that feels like he could throw a hole through a receiver's chest with his running ability. Lamar Jackson, it's his incredible athleticism. He's more athletic than any quarterback in the league. And Mahomes, it's the improvisational skills that he has to elude pressure and make something out of nothing. What is that for Bo Nix? And I've said it could be his running ability. Sean Payton doesn't want him to use it. And I've been a proponent of Sean Payton letting him use it more. Doesn't want to. But as a thrower of the football, I think this is what Bo Nix is. But despite what you may have heard, I have been wrong before. I just have not seen anything that makes me feel wrong right now about it. This is good from Ryan, and this shows you where my mentality is. My thought process, we were talking about the last time that a Chiefs Broncos game had these stakes for both of these teams at the same time, had equal stakes and they were high. I'm thinking of when John Elway was still the quarterback. This is actually a good one, and I can't believe I didn't think of it because I remember where I was. I was in my dorm room watching, surrounded by Broncos fans, and it was when Dante Hall did his human joystick thing and ran back that punt for a touchdown back in 2003. That was a big Broncos-Chiefs game. Good pull by you, Ryan. But that shows you where my mentality is. Last time the Chiefs were able to play the Denver Broncos and the Denver Broncos and the Chiefs were good at the same time, the Chiefs lost that game. That's where my mind goes. Negative. So negative. See, it's not just about Bo Nix and the Broncos that I'm negative about. Just generally negative. Nuggets, shifting gears for just a moment. Nuggets and Pelicans tonight. You can hear it right here on Extra Sports 1300. What I'm watching for tonight is Cam Johnson. That's what I've decided. That I'm going into the game watching very intently what Cam Johnson does. But there was a chance that my plans would have to change because Cam Johnson's dealing with a shoulder injury. About 5 minutes ago, Vinny Benedetto, friend of the program, Nuggets beat writer for the Gazette, talked to David Adelman. Cam Johnson is a go for tonight's game. He will be in the lineup. Zion is questionable. If you're interested in how the Pelicans are doing. But Cam Johnson will be in the lineup, understanding that he's hampered by his shoulder. I'm not expecting the guy to, hit 9 out of 10 threes or pull a Aaron Gordon from night one or even a Jamal Murray from the other night against Minnesota. It looks, I'll just be frank about this. It looks bad. Cam Johnson looks bad with the Denver Nuggets so far. Turning over the football, turning over the basketball just doesn't, it looks very awkward. It looks like a guy who's trying to find his way with this Nuggets team. And I think he will. But with the theme of starting the show with the Colorado Avalanche breaking through on the power play, we'll see if tonight's a bit of a breakthrough for Cam Johnson in terms of finding his fit, his role, and being productive in that role with the Denver Nuggets tonight. But it's the Pelicans. It certainly doesn't have the cachet or as much at stake as the Minnesota game did the other night. So I'll be watching Cam Johnson, see how he's dealing with the shoulder, but also see if he can figure out a way to fit himself into this Nuggets team. It's not an easy role. When you're coming from a situation like Brooklyn, with all due respect, and joining the Denver Nuggets, they're so good on everything else. Like, hey guys, I can do this. Nah, we're okay. I can score. That's okay. You're going to be our fourth scorer. I can pass. Yeah, we got the best passing big man in the league. We're kind of good there. I can play defense. That helps. But Cam Johnson just isn't going to be asked to do or be allowed to do the things that he did in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, it's like, hey, whatever you can do, do it. Because we need all the help we can get. With the Nuggets, it's a very defined role that Cam Johnson needs to play. And it's defending, It's hitting threes. It's that 3-and-D stuff, but it's also, cutting off of Nikola Jokic passes, right? Getting to the basket at the right time for Nikola Jokic to deliver one of those terrific passes. That's really the thing that sticks out to me, is that he doesn't have that timing with Nikola Jokic down yet. And as much as Nikola Jokic could find seemingly anyone on the floor at any time, there is a timing component to it. There really is. And Cam Johnson right now doesn't seem to have that timing. It takes time to develop. And we'll see if there's some positive signs in that area. Coming up tonight, you can hear the game at 7 right here on Extra Sports 1300. Take a break, come back, and that will do it for baseball in Colorado Springs. That's next. After Saturday's Air Force Army game at Falcon Stadium, head to Whataburger and Monument for their Bring Home the W post-game party. Wear your Falcons gear and get a free small shake with any purchase when you dine in. And you're going to want to dine in because Red Mountain Highway will be there performing their own blend of Colorado country. That's the Bring Home the W post-game party at Whataburger just off I-25 in Monument. Now, I'll start this actually very sad story in a humorous way. And I'm reminded of Toby Flenderson from The Office. When everyone gets forwarded that risque picture of Jan on vacation with Michael. Remember that episode? Where he goes into Michael and he's like, I got sent it by my ex-wife and we don't talk. Well, I had something similar to that happen today. Because I had that very same person in my own life text me asking about the former Sky Sox now Vibes. And the fact that they are not going to be playing baseball in Colorado Springs anymore. So I know that a story resonates when I hear from people like that I don't normally hear from. But yes, tip of the cap. This was a story from KRDO today that they reached out and asked, and has been confirmed now that that the Vibes are going to be no more, and it is disappointing that it has gotten to this point. But part of me is like, it's kind of amazing that they've held on for as long as they have. Because let's be honest, the Rockies moving, if you want to call it that, switching affiliations to Albuquerque was the beginning of the end. Right? You lost that local tie. The Brewers came in. Whoever was behind that, kudos to them because we kept affiliated baseball, and it was one step from the bigs, and then they were reclassified. And I may have my timeline off, but at first you lose the Rockies, then the Brewers come in, and you reclassified to a lower division, and then the Brewers leave, and at every step along the way, I think you lose more interest from people. And I'm not going to speak with firsthand knowledge. I haven't been to one of those games in a while. I had a buddy who did work there, and I would go out, take my kids, but I haven't been there a lot. So I guess I'm emblematic of the bigger story here, which is that Colorado Springs perhaps fell out of, not to be overly dramatic, but fell out of love with baseball in this town, or at least played at the level is being played at, independent. And look, like the reason that they're saying is because one of their travel partners, right? One of the teams that they could very easily play and not incur a ton of costs was Northern Colorado, the Owls. They folded. And now they're kind of, in the middle of, they're a long way from anybody else that they play. But obviously, part of this has to be attendance, sponsorships, things like that. And I give the people over there a ton of credit because there have been a lot of really good people who have worked there over the years and have tried to make it just as fun, just as exciting, just as worthwhile. All of this stuff that's happening is totally out of the control of the people that were at that stadium on a day in, day out basis. These decisions were made far above them. And it is very disappointing to see, because the Sky Sox were an institution here, and it just slowly crept towards this, I think, inevitable end. And it's a shame. It really is, because as a sports fan, as somebody who is in sports media, the more sports that there are in this town, the better. I'm all for the idea of Colorado Springs being this huge sports city with all of these teams and all of this fan interest. But it seems like there was at least one entity that was not getting that interest. And yeah, to think about that, I mean, I'm not going to assign blame and point fingers here. The stories have been told over the years, and you can blame who you want. But the idea that AAA baseball affiliated with the Colorado Rockies could not stay here is just, it's still, I know the reasons why it's not. I don't like them. I don't like the reasons. Stadium-wise, was obviously a big reason for that, but it was really bizarre that a team that plays a mile above sea level did not see the benefit of playing at an even higher elevation to get their team acclimated. And I know Albuquerque, it's not the same elevation, right? But they're not playing in New Orleans, I suppose. But it just seems silly that the Rockies' top affiliate is not in Colorado Springs. And when you remove that, and every step along the way where reclassification and it not being affiliated at all with Major League Baseball, I'm sure more and more people lost interest. And I'm not sitting here saying this as somebody that has been totally devoted to that baseball team over the years, because I haven't. Like I said, I'm kind of emblematic of it. I'm an example of it. But it is disappointing when you lose something in the sports landscape in this city, and we're losing professional baseball. That's what it was. It wasn't at the level it used to be. It was never going to be as great as it used to be when I was younger, going to games and you see, Nolan Arenado and Troy Tulowitzki and Carlos Gonzalez and these guys that you can go up the road and see, but you could see them for a cheaper price and you could be up close and personal with them. That's the great thing about minor league baseball. But if you don't know the names, or even if you wonder what the reason is to learn the names, with everything else, I'm surprised they hung on for as long as they did, quite honestly. But I feel terrible for people over there, because like I said, I know people that have worked with that organization, and they're just the best people. And I hope that they find a job in baseball or sports to continue doing what they love to do. But Rocky Mountain Vibes will be folding. Will they set up shop somewhere else? That remains to be seen. And that would be kind of another twist of the knife, I would say, if this organization ends up starting up somewhere else. But yeah, Sky Sox are long gone. It's been the Vibes, but now professional baseball in this town. And I'm sure, look, fast forward a few years, I'm sure somebody will try to revive it. I hope it works. I do. Let's see. Let me get to a couple of texts on this subject. Jason, I hope I'm not betraying your trust by reading this. Helped out in the kitchen at the stadium. It's been a crazy and somber season. Most of us were shocked from the abruptness. Yeah. And that's the other thing, too. Like, maybe this was an inevitable end. This is where it was always going. But that doesn't mean the end was right now. Right? The timing may still have come as a shock, even if there was, some understanding that eventually it would end up here. And there were some signs, again, with Northern Colorado folding and stuff like that. But that makes it even worse, honestly, that people were blindsided by it. This from 951. The Pioneer League was also expanding 2 more teams in California, Modesto and Long Beach, in addition to Oakland last season. Those are significant. I'm guessing in terms of now that would be the teams that they would have to be going out and playing, incurring more cost. That's how I read that, but yeah, it sucks. It does. And an end of an era, certainly, here in the city of Colorado Springs. Not to end it on a sour note, but I hadn't yet gotten to that story, and I wanted to. I think that'll do it. Appreciate the interaction, especially those last couple of texts, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I was locked into all the goings on out there and whether this was coming or not. But from a distance, I could see what was going on, but I wasn't there. So your insight is much appreciated. Let's see what we got tonight. Oh yeah. Nuggets Pels. Zion Williamson game time decision. I thought that we were reporting these things earlier now because of the whole, federal investigation thing. But Willie Green says Zion is a game time decision. Cam Johnson is a go. And you can hear the game coming up at 7 right here on Extra Sports 1300. I will talk to you tomorrow.